We are live. Guys, I gotta tell you, I got a show for you. It has, it's been a phenomenon, and, I'm breaking hearts here. In fact, I want to let everybody know, we previewed this last night on the live show, and we're doing this live on the backup channel. We'll probably cut this up. We're going to let some people, I did this unannounced today. I wasn't sure whether we were actually going to go live with it, but I really thought we should. So, I released this little segment of Luke and I basically discussing the hoax that has now been solved, without a doubt, the Q hoax. And we're going to talk to two of the gentlemen, really the brains behind the operation, the person who thought it up in the first place, and then the first person to post as Q. And we're going to find out what this network really was, what the point of this whole thing is, where it got out of control. I mean, to me, this is a bigger story than JFK Jr. being alive, than indictments that never were. It's really about a phenomenon in society, and a phenomenon that I'm still paying for. If you again look at this video, so it's doing pretty well, but usually we have a 90+% like rate. Right now, it's in the running for more than half thumbs down because people just don't want to accept that Santa Claus isn't real, and that you guys got punked by people that were a little smarter than Ashton Kutcher and Dak Shepard, man. That's the deal. This is the modern day punked, and I hope the people that really bought into it are now going to man up and say, look, let's move on to real issues. You got me. I've seen a couple people do that, but in large, it's not nice to be fooled, but let's meet QAnon. Let's do it. Everybody, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of gentlemen. One goes by the name Defango and the other by Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher is going to be available through audio only. I'm not going to be taking calls, but I may answer super chats. And by the way, I guess nothing's off limits. I don't think anyone's scared to answer questions here, nor should they be. So let's just get into, first of all, who you guys are. Okay, and then we can get into the origin stories of this whole thing. Defango, let's start with you, and then Dreamcatcher, we'll get to you. Go ahead, Defango. Oh, and of course his audio's not working. Hey, brother.
Oh, my bad. It was muted. I do this all the time. It's a thing. So, hi, I'm Defango. I was a chef, and I did a lot of IT stuff in my life, and I'm basically what you call a hacker / mind hacker, where I utilize limited technology to do some pretty wildly interesting things, and I saw an opportunity to take a plan that we came up with. What I mean, we is something that I was thinking about for a long time based off of a book. And we decided to take it into the next level and actually try to execute it and see what would happen, because we wanted to get some information as far as who's real, like what people out there are actually telling the truth about the information, and what people are actually out there just to get the money. And the only way to really do that is to be in control of something from the very beginning and just watch what people say about this thing that just all of a sudden exists. You know what I'm saying? It's a strange situation.
It certainly is a strange situation, but at the same time, a lot of people still are not accepting of this. And what I find fascinating is that you didn't do this, the entire time. You kind of let it take a life of its own, which is even more extraordinary. And I mean, even to this day, no matter how many times this thing has been proved a hoax, no matter how many times they told us the arrests were coming, that Hillary was in Guantanamo Bay, that, John McCain was being executed, and so on and so on and so on, people are still not accepting this. So, again, Santa Claus is not real. And one of the biggest things about this...
Yo, bro, there could be kids fucking watching right now. You can't say shit like that.
I want to talk to Dreamcatcher. Now, we've got Defango's story, a little bit of a backdrop here. Well, what's your story? We're going to get to how you guys got together, but, what's your background?
I guess you could say I'm just a shitlord, or if you can call it a shitposter, a troll, whatever that may be. pretty much I got pretty attracted to the 2016 election, like most people. It was sort of like a phenomenon that I think everybody gravitated towards. And then, little by little, dabbling on the, whether it be Reddit, 4chan, things like that, it led me to, get linked up with Defango. And then from there, we sort of put our great minds of, my shit posting skills and his mind hacks, and we established a plan that, we were sort of just like, hey, let's just shit post. These are some things that have worked. Let's see where we can go with this. So, we dropped down a few posts, and we're like, hey, it's cool. We let it out of the farm. Let's see what happens. And then I guess you could say it got out of hand, and the 8chaners sort of got a hold of it and spun it into their nice web of, I don't even really know what you would call it, but yeah, I mean,
All right,
that's the short story.
I mean, short to you, brother, but there were so many things in there that the average person has no idea what you're talking about. And again, I talked to Defango for about an hour and a half the other night and really tried to develop this story because, first of all, Defango, I think you told me you were early 30s. I'm not sure how old you are, Dreamcatcher, but I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 this year. Similar generations, definitely not, at least us two, millennials. And, we kind of grew up, first of all, we grew up in an age with little to no internet. I mean, the internet wasn't even around when I was there. Black and white TVs were still there, and I actually had rotary phone in my house. Okay, I know that a lot of people can't believe those things, but they were real, still part of my generation. And for people to get involved not only so much on message boards, but the websites we're going to talk about that kind of are the origins of this story. When you say shit posting, what the fuck is that? I mean, so I gotta ask, trolling has been, it used to be you were just fucking with somebody or you were lying to them, but now it's almost become an accepted art form called shit posting, correct? And it's almost, you can't wait to see how many people bite on the line. Would that be a correct assumption, Dreamcatcher?
100%. I would say you can actually obtain a degree. You sit on message boards and you sort of fine tune your craft. And then from there, you sort of just you throw a bunch of shit at the wall and you see what sticks. A lot of it's targeted towards boomers because what's funny about it is boomers sort of are the ones that always gravitate towards shit posting. Like you could tell them like, hey, the moon is actually the Death Star, and a lot of them will actually believe it. So I mean, it's just sort of how you go about it. It's an art form, and that's the best. That's the simplest description that you can give it, so you don't overwhelm people. And that's sort of the art of shit posting, if that's what you want to call it. But that's just an easier breakdown of it for maybe people that haven't heard the term before.
All right, so
Definitely
good.
in our form.
All right, so that's a good base. That there is, obviously you aren't the only two people that look at this as an art form, and we have seen it in pop culture more and more and more. Obviously, the biggest mainstream media storm has been who is it? That Count Dankula guy with the dog, and he's the first shit poster that I was aware of that I'd ever heard the term used for. So now I want to bring it to how some people that like posting on the internet and basically messing with people and see who believes. Oh, we've got proof, guys. I wouldn't say art form, but I'm looking in these. We've got proof. I'm going to get to some of the super chats. I see one already that's asking, do you live stream or do you ever film yourself posting with a smartphone? So they're asking if you had filmed yourself maybe posting some of this stuff with a smartphone. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, I've already seen enough evidence, forensic evidence, metadata in some of these posts that there's no doubt that these are the guys that started this. So let's get there. There's a group of you guys, shit posters, that also kind of coincides with the hacking community, and you go to DEF CON for the first time. For those not aware of what DEF CON is, this is a group of not only white hat, but black hat, and, I guess gray hat. That's also terminology, hackers. They get together once a year. It's a place that you don't want your phone. You want to turn that off. You want to bring a burner. But it's also a place where people, I wonder why, where people can get together. Now, I guess I have to preface this with you being a member of the Cicada site. because I didn't know what this was, but there is a Cicada site, and what everybody's like, what that? Basically, it's a puzzle site. Is that correct?
Yeah,
DeFango?
it's like a puzzle site. It's like this internet mystery group that was on the internet that also was born on 4chan, just so happens. But it was like this puzzle that was on the internet for a while. I'd spent some time solving another puzzle called Tangri 137, and then I decided to take a crack at this one when it came up again in like 2017, and then I started solving these puzzles, and it's lots of stenography. It has to do with cryptography, and it's a whole mess of different things. So you're dealing with audio files, video files, and a host of other things, and it's basically you're trying to get to the end of a sort of puzzle. And I think that like a lot of the stuff that went into doing this was based upon things that were learned from how this actual situation operated, because most people who would actually be able to say that like one of the most successful operations that was ever run on 4chan was probably the Cicada 3301 puzzle that went out back in like 2012.
Okay, so let me get this straight. What would you say is the biggest, because we're going to get into the term LARP and what this really was, a live action role play. What was the most successful and famous prior to QAnon? Like, what would be the one that everybody was talking about? And you know what? Let's get Dreamcatcher. What would you say? You there, my friend?
Would you say the most like the most like successful one?
Well, you know what? Again, it's your community, so you tell me. I mean, not only what you would think would be the most successful one, but maybe one that I would kind of be aware of, or maybe the public would. Because, guys, to me, this is a brand new phenomenon, especially on the level it went. So when you're looking at this, and again, we're going to get to the origins soon. I just think there's so much that's interesting to talk about. I know you guys are used to dealing with people that are accusing you on boards, and I want the proof. Listen, I want to know why you did this and where this goes. So when you're looking up to, other LARPs and other live action role plays and like what is the most successful one? Because obviously there's never been one as big as this. So what do you think, Dreamcatcher?
What you really got to do is like sort of probe your audience. You look at things that you follow the trends of what's popular out there, like what the current public's talking about. Then what you do is you sort of create a character based on that. You could pretty much do a LARP for just about anything. You could literally LARP someone that worked at a grocery store. What you do is you sort of just follow the trends, the key phrases that work, and then from there, that's sort of how you craft a live action role playing game. It actually originates from Dungeons and Dragons. That's sort of that community. You can actually go to a LARPing like festival, something like King Richard, something like that. They do LARPing there. So that sort of it's been spun from that real life live action role playing to a digital form, and you just pretty much create that based on what people are paying attention to.
So it's a
really
manipulation of what's surrounding somebody, is what you would say. It wouldn't be like just terminology, but you pay attention to what they're paying attention to, what's important in their lives, what they're surrounding themselves with, and then you play to those things.
I would say that is pretty much.
Okay, so again, I guess I'll ask you, DeFango, what would you say is the most success? Because most people that were like myself that were just becoming familiar with the term LARP, it was the kids in the park that I was seeing now in with cardboard swords hitting each other. You talked about it coming out of Dungeons and Dragons, but that was the terminology of LARPing, and now it's morphed into again, it's 2019, into like a shit posting hoax verse. So before this, what's the biggest one that's been successful? What do you think, DeFango?
Well, I'd have to say probably Ebola-chan.
Okay. Ebola-chan.
So Ebola-chan was like an anthropomorphic version of the Ebola virus that's like an anime character that looks really funny or whatever. But sometime in like, I think it was 2014, 2015, in that area right there, they basically started anthropomorphizing Ebola as this meme and posting it everywhere, and it became like a big thing where all of a sudden there's now actually like an Ebola outbreak happening in Africa, but it's not like directly connected to each other, but it's probably one of the most well-known LARPs because obviously people were posting about it all over the place. They were saying if you didn't repost this thing, you would get, like Ebola.
Okay.
Right? And you would die. So obviously people didn't want to get Ebola and die, so they would post the image everywhere. So it was utilizing a mental trigger within the brain, like obviously this is horseshit, but what if it wasn't horseshit? I'm gonna post it just in case because it doesn't take anything from me.
Jesus
you know what I'm saying?
I get it. All right. So let's move on. I'm gonna hit some of these things. So I want to kind of go back to this Cicada thing. So when you talk about these puzzles, we also talked about the Machiavellian aspect of it. That a lot of people will create these puzzles, whether it be some kind of an encryption puzzle or whatever, and let people pry at it for a while, not get there, and then they'll solve their own puzzle to try to look like a genius. It's very Machiavellian, build their own credit.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
That is 100%. 100%.
Okay. And that's almost, kind of what you guys did on a larger level. So I want to read just through these. DeFango lies, #Cicada reject. Well, we're talking about Cicada now and how it's relevant to this whole thing. So, again, everybody's going to be able to, I'm going to put the links to DeFango giving you the quote unquote trip code. And we're going to talk about what a trip code was long before anybody else. We're going to give you the links. I'm not sure if the tweets are up from the original post with the metadata. If someone's asking in here for the Discord logs, well, we're going to talk about Discord. I'm sure they have the logs. And in fact, Discord logs, can't hack that. No, you can't. And they've got them. DeFango fake solved the Cicada puzzle he made and got kicked out. I'm sure everybody did that. Thank you for the thing. I mean,
yeah,
again,
I'm sure everybody was doing that. I'll answer that one right now and just be like, so what people are actually getting at, the person who said that Elizabeth Veering is one of the individuals that's connected to the little Cicada group. See, when I started looking into the Cicada group, I found out that was probably one of the most successful LARPs out there because most of the people that are quote unquote involved with the organization have no idea what the guy in charge of it is actually trying to do with it. And it's basically like create his personal army. We got him on recordings. I got emails, records of everything of what this guy was doing. And basically, I wanted to get into Cicada because I thought it was going to be something good for it. But what I realized, it was actually just a group of really nasty individuals that were kind of like LARPing in the sense that they were acting like they were being really positive, but they were doing really, really negative things. And as you can see, no matter where I go, you can see super chats and donations and people talking shit like from these people. All these are the people that are actually directly connected with the puzzle in either some way, shape, or form. Now, in the original versions of the puzzle, I had to go through, solved it, did all the work with a bunch of different people, and we have all the evidence to do that. After that, the first year of puzzles was done, and then the Q thing was created, which was the thing that I actually got started off with, the thing that I actually put into the game. Look, Mr. TS, he's actually posting in your chat right now. He was the guy that was like, hey, DeFango, I want you to make the puzzle for 2018 and then you can solve it. And I was like, wow, isn't that just like a kind of stupid thing to do? And I was like, I think there's going to be a better way of doing it where I make a puzzle, solve through it, then tell everybody I made the puzzle, and then be like, by the way, everything that I haven't solved so far is actually the real puzzle that you guys are going to have to do. And, what did you think? I was going to sit up here and give you guys all the information for nothing? And I did a very big expose on like the entire group of individuals that were connected to the quote unquote puzzle. And since then, I've been basically dealing with this since almost last April. And no matter what I do, no matter where I go on the internet, I get stalked by these people. They call me a liar. They say all this stuff. And I got every email, every text message, everything. And I actually already posted it all to my YouTube accounts and Twitter accounts that like anybody can see. But the way that these people operate, they got really pissed off that I exposed their LARP because for them, it was going to be a big money maker in the same way that QAnon became a big money maker for a lot of people. And like the idea was to expose both of these different sides almost at the same time by utilizing their own tactics.
And you know what? That's the next thing I want to get into right there, the money making aspect of this, because first of all, we haven't really even talked about the creation, and how you kind of, I mean, it became a shill factory. That's all I could tell you. Like
Shill Factory 9000, bro.
I mean, it really did, and I mean the literal term we can sit here and we can throw mud, but I'm not going to. I'm not even going to name names. I don't care. I'm gonna. I mean, it's obvious who did the things that they did and said that they had the connections that they said. I may ask about some of the reactions when some of the bigger names did some things, but I just want to know. So you go in there, and why do you tell people why you use the Q symbol? Because I thought that was an interesting story. You go into DEF CON, meet some guys, but you had this idea to use Q. Why?
I used Q because earlier in the Cicada puzzles, after I had met this guy, the Stig in the chat or whatever, he's here calling me a liar or whatever. I met this guy in person, and that's when I realized that, this was a hoax. This was a joke. This was these people basically taking so much of my time in life to, put on their puzzle that's basically meaningless. And honestly, I was really, really pissed off, but they gave me some stupid spear and I had to play a character. So I said, fine, fuck it, I'm going to see exactly how deep this goes. And honestly, for me, it ended up being a very interesting situation because I saw this Q and then I started looking up Q and I came upon this book by Luther Bassett. I read the book and then I decided, I was like, that's interesting. That could be maybe what these guys were talking about, creating something, creating a change. But I never really, expounded upon that. It wasn't until about, I think it was in August, they had put up a new puzzle and they were referencing DEF CON. I fundraised money on my YouTube channel to get to DEF CON, all the videos and everything are still posted and up. And basically I went to DEF CON and what I was supposed to do was put up a QR code for a puzzle. And that was supposed to be it. And instead of doing that, I basically edited that little piece of the puzzle, added some extra stuff to it, and printed out about 500 of them, and then started passing them around all over DEF CON. And basically, it was a meet. It would take these people to the website where, the puzzles were being distributed so they could go ahead and attempt to solve that one. And then there was also a note saying, if you want to learn more, meet me at this place at this time. And I chose what you call a sky talk. They happen at DEF CON a lot. They don't allow phones. They don't allow cameras. There's no recording devices of any kind because, sometimes you talk about some really, really interesting stuff. This particular talk was a talk about whistleblowing, like how people that whistleblow for the government, people that actually do the real work to get this information out, that people take for granted. I decided to give my, diatribe and what I think would be an interesting idea and how to not only create a method for delivering information, but test that method for delivering information to see if it's actually viable. Because, there's very big issues that are involved when, you start posting shit random or anonymously on the internet. People can impersonate you. How do you know if it's real or truthful? There's a whole lot of things interpreted to it. So I basically used this time to talk with the best of the best and listen to everybody's arguments on how this would work. And we came up with the plan, and the plan was very simple. Put out a bunch of disinformation leaks and follow the people that are going to be tracking them. Some people are going to look at them and just be like, all right, that's bullshit, obviously. Some people are going to say, okay, this is here. But we actually wanted to see who was going to jump on this and actually try to turn it into like a money-making situation. For a very long time, we've noticed that things have moved from 4chan to 8chan like this in a very interesting way. And it's almost like whenever a social movement of any kind starts to grow on the internet, it's almost like there's this group of individuals that will jump in and try to take it over. And I wanted to be able to identify those people. So that's how this QAnon thing actually worked. And I think I said, yeah, we're just going to ask questions. We ask everything like questions, like Socratic method. It'll be really interesting. And that way, if anything comes up with it, we could just call it Q and we get plausible deniability because I can connect it later on back in the day to this stupid, Cicada song that nobody ever solved. And I was like, either way, it gives us the ability to find out who's going to be truthful and who's not going to be truthful. So when this thing gets exposed as a LARP, we're going to have a bunch of people that basically get caught with their pants down, like David Wilcock, guy that's always saying that he's talking about the truth and la, 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 la. All of a sudden, he's a QAnon supporter, and he's saying that it's real and all this stuff, and he's got inside information. And I'm just like, bro, you're full of shit. No way. You know, like
Well, he
it
also
becomes-
hold on. He also has for a long time said that he is the reincarnation of Edgar Casey, and I could go on and on and on about the types of things that David will listen. Again, I'm not here to attack anybody. If you're into New Age nonsense that is without any sort of evidence, you want to go to stuff that's very interesting and is a little bit speculative because we're only what 150 years into cameras, to actually have just like photographic evidence. Forget about just film, guys. So when you look at something like those mysteries, Graham Hancock and his partner do great work. And when they're wrong, like when they endorsed the Mars face, and then the other photography came back, they admitted it. They brought it back. They brought it back to reality, and that's why we're doing this broadcast. Because I see some of these comments over here. And, you can only be in denial so much. And that's great. Listen, I like David Icke too. And I can listen to David Icke. That does not mean I give any credence to reptilian people. Okay? There's a thing called discernment. So I want to just kind of move this along a little bit and get to Dreamcatcher's role in this. Because it's not just you two. I know that you've mentioned another person called Microchip. How many people were involved in this initial launch? And you talked about the initial meeting. You then did form a Discord, correct?
Yes, we did. We pretty much got a Discord of about 8 of us, but the main 3, obviously me, Defango, and Microchip. And Microchip just wanted me to he's not going to be on. I tried to get him on. He's actually on his way traveling to Israel. He's been traveling there a lot. And that's the thing about Microchip. He's very mysterious. No one, like even Defango will tell you. He'll just like DM us. Or
I'm pretty
send a
sure he's
message and be
Morsad
like,
or something like that. Pretty sure.
yeah, it's bizarre. It's weird. He'll just like send us weird like random messages like tweet this or get this trend, boost this on the chans or things like that. So he's very mysterious. And yeah, the main people in the beginning was just us 3. It's sort of just being like, hey, I don't know. And this sort of gives a little backstory. And this wasn't really something that Defango had mentioned. That Antifa petition, if you remember that Antifa petition, that made it on Fox News and it went trending and it was like I guess you could say trending through the media. That was actually started by our group. And we sort of took that and sort of added, we prodded the audience to see what works and what gets people involved. And then that's what we ran with in terms of that. So that's just another example. And yeah, like I said, it's just 3. We pretty much just got together and said, hey, we all shitpost. We all have tried things. What do we feel is going to work for this time right now? And a lot of it was, just being funny because most people don't realize that, like the chans are just for fun. There's not like some top secret information coming from 4chan or 8chan or whatever it may be that you use in terms of a forum. It's always been a shitposting message board. That's all it's ever been. It's never been there for real information. It's not like, say, a WikiLeaks or like an old legacy media company.
Well, let me ask you something, man.
Verify.
Well, would you say that there was some relative information there when Reddit, for instance, banned all the pedogate research? Again, this is something me and Defango talked about. I'm not, I know there was hysteria out there with Frazzled Rip and the HRC tape, but the bottom line is there is an email in there and a few emails that are very questionable, but at least one where we're talking about a 7, 9, and 11-year-old kid going to a party on a farm that are going to be in a heated pool for entertainment. So, and those Reddit forums, they did seem like people were trying to ferret out information, but then you get into the shitposting aspect, all of a sudden there's a menu for your hobby of abusing and eating children. And obviously that's a troll job. So I guess that's where... go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's where... No, but that's where reality mixes, right? Because you're talking about... I get it, but almost any... me and Defango were also talking about... Again, you haven't revealed your age, and we haven't talked privately, but we were talking about the original days of the Let's Roll 911 forums. and you know how there was a lot of legitimate research there, and then all of a sudden we're talking about ghost planes and directed energy weapons and you know TV fakery and fucking horse shit that you know helped derail a real movement. You know, so the you know my critics are going to be out there and saying, "Oh, you guys, you gave these guys a pass." And by the way, I want to say, hey, these guys are admitted shit posters, so take everything with a grain. Take everything with a grain. But I've seen the evidence that they are, in fact, the people that started QAnon. So that's my question to you, man. Do you think that there's any reality on these sites? Is it just using more discernment? Because I think that we have to use discernment in everything. Just because CNN fucking says it doesn't make it true, and just because the you know tomorrow's news today says it, the leader in alternative media, obviously doesn't make it true either. Correct?
Just because a faceless face on the internet says it doesn't make it true.
Yeah, the internet. Everything's true on the internet. You all need to remember that. No, but for real, there were say like certain things that were done on the chains Reddit where they'd be like, hey, we're doing a sit-in or things like that. People will use it for say like real-time operations, if that's what you want to call it. So there is a part of it. But you can sort of see, sort of like what you said, like obviously everybody knows pedophilia is something that exists. And we all, you know, are aware that, you know, it's becoming more and more common in our world today. But you've got to be able to be like, okay, you know, this sounds legitimate. There could be, say, a secret code words that are used. But what they did was they took that and they spun it. They spun it into what their own reality is what I see. A lot of the times people grasp onto things. And it's just human nature to trust. It's just human nature to be trustful. I think we all can agree to that. And what you have here is you have people that take an idea that has realism to it and they spin it and they create their own reality, I guess you could say. So I would say it's really a balance. You've got to be able to pick out when somebody says, yeah, they're eating children and doing all these things. You got to be able to realize that that's more than likely untrue. But at least the pedophilia part of it, that does exist.
Well,
so
let me say this.
Blending.
I mean, I get where that comes from. You know, I interviewed a guy named Nick Bryant many, many years ago. He did a follow-up book to the Franklin cover-up, the Franklin Scandal. I encourage everybody to read it because it has a 100-page thesaurus in it. And that's what you want, because that thesaurus isn't Nick Bryant's writing. It's the FBI reports, the local police reports, the testimony of these individuals, the local news reports. It's an incredible, it's incredibly well sourced. And although, I mean, you know, he backs up a very disturbing story at the Bohemian Grove, I can say that Operation U-Tree has now outed Jimmy Savile, a person who has giant $25,000 checks next to Margaret Thatcher, you know, for kids, not for him, for kids, for his work with children. And not only was he abusing children, but the police have now confirmed that he was having sex with corpses. Let me repeat that. He was a necrophiliac on top of it. He was raping people in hospice. So you had this guy that was a ghoul on so many levels. And unfortunately, you know, you do have cultures, you know, that are into this weird, dark fucking shit. And I get it. You again, you have to have the discernment. Every time I hear that, you know, for instance, somebody's a Satanist, I'll throw it back and I'll say, listen, we don't know that for sure, but yeah, joining Skull and Bones, they do an occult ritual too. Sure looks that way. Is the Bohemian Grove based on occultism? Well, before the giant owl was there, they had a giant Buddha, and they dressed up in, you know, large druid-like regalia. So it is based in that, but I guess you just don't know anybody's heart unless you're that person, because there are fucking monsters hiding everywhere. So now I want to move on.
That's definitely true.
You know, I mean,
Super
Jesus,
true.
man, you just never know. I want to move on to the very first post. I believe you are the first poster, Dreamcatcher. So tell us what's behind that post, and then I really just want to get into because you guys are only Q for how long? What, 2-3 weeks?
Not sure.
No, I wouldn't even say it went that long. I
Really?
think Defango maybe 2-3 posts. It was the main ones on the 4th that were mainly us, and then I think, and we really don't know what happened. Maybe some of the other people in the Discord had, you know, screwed around with the idea. But
I know what
yeah, the
happened,
first-
but
All right, so wait, so let's bring it
Defango
back.
knows.
Because, all right, so people are obviously going to be confused. There's some intrigue here. What is the first post you guys officially make as QAnon? Because you tailed this off from the follow the white rabbit thing, right? That was already posted by some kind of an anonymous source. Basically, you piggybacked on somebody predicting the overthrow of the Saudi Arabian regime by the new prince and tried to gain credibility through that. Would you explain that to people? Oh, did I lose him?
Is he there? You might have lost him.
I may have lost him. Damn it. That's all right.
You may have lost him.
No,
It's fine.
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay,
I'm
okay.
still here. And let me make sure. I think it was just my connection. You were talking about the White Rabbit post and about the Saudi Arabia
Yeah.
thing.
But yeah,
Did I hear
basically
that
how this all spun into the fact that I was in a Walmart and one of my friends took me to the side and started talking to me about this like it was real. And okay, and I looked at him and I respect him and he's still a very good buddy of mine. And I was just like, listen, man, I'm sorry, riddles and bread crumbs. I remember at one point he was telling me about the helicopter crash at the Rothschilds and they might have killed Jacob in a mission to really take down the deep state. And I'm like, fairy tales and unicorns, my friend. The Rothschild system is not being taken out by white hat hackers and assassins for the Trump administration. But please, Dreamcatcher, tell us about these initial posts.
All right. So one of the main things. What was? I'll ask you a direct question. What
Sure.
was the main campaign slogan for Donald Trump?
Jesus, what was the main camp? I should know this, right? I mean, it's pretty, man. I don't know.
Build the wall.
Oh,
At rallies. At the rallies.
At the
What
rallies?
was the main?
Oh, lock her up.
Was the
Everybody
main
was doing
chant.
the lock her up, right? The lock her up chant.
Oh yeah. So that was one of the things that obviously everyone realizes that caught fire with the meme crowd. I mean, there were so many memes out there that we all saw, things like that. So that was sort of where that originated from. And one of the things you sort of tie the three together. You got Susan Rice, you got Puma, and you got all those people. So they're all like Clinton people, right? So our plan was to try to, I guess, spin as much into one post that could potentially catch people's eyes and maybe sort of get people to do critical thinking on their own. More so give people, I guess, homework to do. And that's sort of the idea originally, sort of what I think DeFango and I had in mind, because both of the stuff that we've done throughout our life, it's always been about, looking deeper, not too deep. They always tell you when you go down a rabbit hole, when you see certain things, you book out of there as fast as you can. Or then you end up like, believing in lizard people and all that crap, which is just out of control. It's like if it's basically, I guess, doing a 4-day marathon of watching Star Trek and Star Wars and then thinking that that's real life. That's when you know to get out of the rabbit hole. So that's sort of where all that sort of came to mind. And then we were just sort of just throwing questions to, see that pique our interest, but then also, like I said, those trends, those things that were trending on certain sections of the web. And that's sort of where the idea came from. It was taking social media data and turning that into a form of a question that allowed people, it was simple enough, but interesting enough that it had them dig, it had them do their own studying and things like that. That's sort of where that idea.
And I want to stop you there because you guys seem to have been pulling for Trump. At least like you talking about it and you seeing what was effective. Now you've mentioned basically on the original Outing podcast where you guys talked and basically said what you did, that you were a low-level guy on one of the Trump campaigns, that you did some back-end social media type stuff. And then DeFango, privately, you told me that you would actually worked on the Obama campaign. Maybe bought into the hope and change of that. So I got to ask you, with that, is that kind of maybe how you guys connected? You were just so fed up after actually thinking, hey, maybe this will change something. Seeing it firsthand, it wasn't. And then did you guys buy into some of this Trump crap? I mean, listen, hey, I give the man credit for what he's done on some levels. Like, I just want to say this. I'm glad that there's a path to peace in North and South Korea. That's a good thing. I'm glad he's at least saying we're leaving Syria. John Bolton is saying no, he appointed him. He's a terrible person. Gina Haspel's not a good person. I don't trust Pompeo. But at the same time, Robert Mueller is one dark motherfucker. I can't believe that people are holding this guy up like he is some kind of hero. Folks, he covered up 9/11. He is one of the main people that shut FBI agents, Robert Wright and others, up about Khalid al-Mihdhar, about Yasin Qadi, about bin Mahfouz, about how the money moved, about where these guys were. That's reality. And if you're lost in that, you think he's some kind of fucking superhero that's going to save you from the Russians, you're out of your fucking mind. So I'm sorry for my short rant there, but what you're saying there was you never bought in, and what was it? What was it? An apolitical motive? I mean, you're working on the Trump campaign. You got to believe it a little. And I got to tell you, once he beat out Rand Paul was the only other guy up there that even said, half true. I like Rand. He's not perfect, but him and Trump were the only guys that were sparring a little bit. And Rand Paul I'm going to lead towards because he's not pro-authoritarianism, talking about how Edward Snowden's a bad guy. And then after you win the election, you turn your back on Julian Assange, one of the only reasons you got elected in the fucking first place. Again, sorry for the rant. So
yeah, I definitely, I wouldn't say I bought into it. And let it be known, too, I actually, first election I ever voted for, I voted for Barack Obama. So I would say a lot of my frustrations, this idea I had hoped would rally people to maybe potentially get more involved with their government, to make them question it so much that they needed to, maybe get involved committee-wise, whether it's grassroots, things like that. And obviously it spiraled pretty quickly out of control. That's just, sometimes you don't know how effective a shitpost is until it sort of takes off.
All right, so let's
effective.
So all right, so let's do this, because now we're going to get into the trip code, because I didn't know what a trip code was, and I'm going to just explain to the audience. Basically, it's a password. And once you get the password, you can post as this person, and that's how Q gets passed along to whatever entity it is now. Okay, but I want everybody to realize that you are staring in the face the evidence that it was started as phony. So now you have to believe that some kind of other real government entity or white hats or whatever you want to call it, it's the same flavor that was around in the late 90s, early mid-2000s, NESRA, where we didn't have to worry because there was a bunch of people in our military and government that were just going to take over when the time was right, and we were going to have our constitutional republic back. There was a guy named Tom Flacco during the 9/11 Truth Movement when Scooter Libby finally got indicted. And Tom Flacco done some good work, and then all of a sudden he said there were secret indictments. And Cheney was getting indicted, and Bush was getting indicted, and everybody was going down. And guess what? None of them went to jail except for Scooter Libby, who just got pardoned by this president. Okay, that's how the system works. Stop believing in fairy tales and put their feet to the fire. So, you guys set it up so you knew it was fake, but you wanted to see where it would take off from. So you said what? You do 3 or 4 posts, and what you've told me is that when you enable this type of password, they're easily cracked through brute force, correct? So,
correct.
So you only have about 2 weeks before, this basically gets cracked, and you guys knew that. But before it gets cracked, DeFango, you get asked on your live stream, right, or your program, and you kind of drop. You say the damn trip code. You say the password.
Yeah, it was like October 29th, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's like October 28th or 29th. Like, people were like freaking out. I'm playing video games, and people were like, "Dude, have you seen these like crazy posts on the net?" And I was just like, "What are you talking about?" And nobody was calling it Q back then. It wasn't until the Q moniker actually pops up, and these guys just asked me, and I was just like, "That thing some anonymous person posted on the internet." Then I just say, all I gotta say is Matlock, and that's it. And I just let it go. I didn't say anything else, because even at that point, nobody was even posting on the trip code at that point yet. The trip code didn't even exist. Nobody had even started posting as that at that certain point. So this is where a lot of people get screwed up. James and Chip were the initial starters, but we invited some other people into the Discord, And those are the cicadas that are in the chat right now. They keep posting little pictures and stuff of, oh, well, I was doing it at this time. I was doing it at this time. And, you know, that's me basically, Loki, having them basically out themselves while hating me, but they don't realize that they're actually outing themselves and what they were doing. So, like, one guy actually posted something. There was this name that came up, Monty McGovern, who was posting, or one of the individuals that was posting under the trip code as Matlock. And when the trip code, the first trip code on 4chan got burned, you know, we can go look at the QAnon post right now, but you're going to notice something that happens with all of the actual names and numbers. You know, the ID, the post ID changes a few times. The original QAnon post is from a completely different ID than the second one. And then if you look, you'll see that literally for each different ID, that is a different web browser from a different person posting on there. There's some people that did them in sequential order where you can see that, but the overall first couple of posts, none of those ones were actually done with the trip code. And this is where a lot of people get screwed up, because most people automatically think Q, when Q started, it started under a crypt code and it was calling itself Q. The crypt code itself didn't actually exist all the way up until November. And that's where it gets really, really strange, is because in November is when they started using the trip code that had the password for Matlock. And if you don't believe any of this stuff, is how did I know all this shit from the very, very get-go and beginning? It's because it was actually part of the plan. I think it was November 1st that the name Q Clearance Patriot actually came out. And where Q Clearance Patriot actually came out, I do believe, is when our new friends started actually, you know, posting on the board. So the power struggle, as so to speak, was starting to happen at this time. So we had the emergence. Once the name, the moniker Q was taken or whatever, I think that's when we're getting actually into the guys that were posting under the moniker of the OG trip code. And I think one of the guys' email address is Hellfire Proton. There's another one. It's like the Stig at protonmail.com or whatever. But right now they're actually posting this shit they're actually posting this stuff in the live chat right now, like emails and things, you know, kind of like hating on me. But at the same time, these are the people that were actually involved in the second little round in there. So we had a few people started off, get it going, and then there was a second group of people that were Cicada connected. I'm not going to say they were directly involved with Cicada. They were just people that I had introduced in order to make this thing a little bit crazier. And if you look at it, you could clearly see that that's when all the problems started happening. I think that anybody connected to anything that I knew, the last time that they were posted would have been actually November 24th, 2017. And I also have videos like from that time frame, from the very start of the Q post to the end of the Q post, when the trip code was burned and all of a sudden there was all this nonsense. So we're moving to 8chan. So the reason for doing this is to ensure that people understand that, you know, there was movement that happened within the initial groups and how this thing started, but then people actually took this thing and changed it. You know, once all of our people's hands were completely off of it, you know, like I had to beg a few people because they just wanted to use this for money, and I'm like, that's not the point of this, you know. If you
so explain that end of it, because, you know, I don't want to burn anybody here, but maybe you could also speak to the stream catcher. In fact, I'll go to you. You guys start bringing people in who end up becoming YouTube stars, decoding Q puzzles, correct? And that's kind of part of the joke.
Actually, that's the thing. Like, none of the I would assume that you're talking about like your Sathers, your Fiends, and all those people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think we ever had any of them actually in the original Discord. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, there was a few that maybe loose ends that maybe potentially could have been connected with them, maybe in their DM groups, Discords, whatever it may be. They could have been a part of a completely different network. Probably the one lesson would be learned is to better vet people. But that obviously, you know, hard lesson learned. But yeah, when it comes to that, it seems like there were people that put their own spin to it. At least that's how I see it. Originally, when you go and read about it, there was no mention of any Q Clearance Patriot or any of those things. It was just general questions, just sort of, like I said, get a conversation started.
So-
And obviously, now there's people that are, making money from innocent Americans and they're lying to them. But, me and Dufango and Chip, we made it dead clear. We're like, this ain't for money. This is just fun. This is just shit posting.
Yes,
And of
this is
course,
just
you're going to have
shitposting.
people that are greedy in this world that are going to want to take advantage of the less fortunate or the naive. And that's not any slight against anybody that believed it. I'm just saying that there are people in this world that want to make money and they will take advantage of that. And that's sort of where I think it's spiraled into the money maker that it is now.
So yeah, let's talk about the money making aspect of it. So were you guys still in control when, people were making, again, I'm not going to sit here and say names, but, I've talked to Q. I've talked to him, okay? And then the next day, I think it was, whoever was posting his Q or whatever said, no, we have no contact with this person. Anybody saying that they have contact with us were you guys the posters on that?
I don't think that it was directly us on that one.
Dreamcatcher?
But if
he
you're
was like-
asking any specifics of like Sather, Praying Medic, any of those people, never had I heard those names or even ever heard of those people during the original creation of Q. There was no one by that name, and that's why it's you can sort of tell. That's why I'm thinking maybe there was a loose end that that maybe took some of this what was created and did their dirty work. Because no, there was definitely not any type of people talking to us directly that we didn't know about. Because while we had other people in the Discord channel, I'm not sure if many people use Discord. You can sort of lock out rooms. There were certain things that only the three of us could see. So, like, we dropped tidbits of things that we were working on, but we never really revealed the true actual posts. We just snippets and being like, hey, how does this sound? And maybe based on those snippets that we posted, it gave people enough to run with it and turn it into their own. And that's where I think, like I said, those loose ends sort of, spiraled into whatever the hell it is now.
And what is it now? I mean, I would say, what, 4 to 6 months ago?
Grifters.
Well,
it's grifters.
I get that part, but like 4 to 6 months ago, it was more that there were people all over the place, like trying to decode this stuff, live stream decoding it with people, making money. Is that the only money making route? Because I've also heard that people attached malware to some of these posts, or tried to get people to download. Go ahead.
Basically, people would make like maybe a website, and they would have like ads attached to the back. A lot of the times, you go say search certain websites, you're generating some kind of revenue for them, and obviously people had that malicious intent to be like, hey, this is just some normal blog, but you don't. There's a lot on the back end that maybe your tech savvy people aren't aware of, and that's sort of how you can generate revenue based on doing that, just by doing simple blog posts and things like that.
Dude, the biggest revenue makers were the actual QO drop apps, like, because somebody actually spent the time to code out an app, and when they were selling one of them on the iOS, it was like $9.99. But if you think about that, that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars that they generated, by the creation of these applications just to basically put out these Q posts. And that's not even something that was originally needed to get there, but like that's something that was created in order to help manipulate people. And I mean, there's popular websites online, like the QAnonMap.com, things like this that just seem to be like altruistic applications. And on the very most part, as they are, but they were created with the sole purpose of being able to manipulate the post, because they're not pulling a live feed of the post at all. That's not how they're programmed to do it. They're programmed to pull the ones that they request, and then they pull everything loaded into a database, and that's the only stuff. So if there's things that they want to delete out of there, they can delete it out of there. And anybody that doesn't understand the code, which is the majority of the QAnon base, isn't going to be able to actually understand this. And I think that it's been very strange as, when we were doing this, it was just simple posting and it was fun. But when it was over and it's ended, and we all at least decided that we as a group were going to stop doing this and, start viewing the future, we started seeing people, very direct people start getting into it. Like, the Corsies of the world, I guess as it were, that started jumping onto this thing almost immediately after this trip code was burned. And then this situation turned into buy the app, buy this QAnon mug, get the t-shirt, buy my book. And that's where it really, really got interesting, because I mean, I can't fault people on wanting to make money, but the idea of this thing was to show people's intentions, and the only way to effectively be able to show someone's intention is just to allow them to do this. Because if you think about it, we initially, the first person that ever got a shred of information about any of this was Unirock TV. I told him directly on December 24th while we were playing some video games. Basically gave him the short and skinny of it without, giving him any evidence. I just said, this is who it was. This is what's happening. Here's all the things.
Now let's stop
Choose
right
to
there.
believe me or not.
Now, was he already posting at that time? He'd already been posting decryption videos on Q by the time you actually told him, or no? Or
Yes.
did he did, right? So at least he didn't go into it maliciously. But what you're saying, he didn't go into it maliciously, but after, and again, my audience, I'm looking through, I see a lot of defenders out there. I see a lot of people that aren't really informed on how this whole thing snowballed. And again, go to Defango's Twitter, please. You scroll down. There's plenty of screenshots right now. You can see what I believe he said October 29th. Go look for his video on his live stream. It's still there. He's going to tell you the password. There's no disputing the passwords out there. I want to move on to, kind of wrap this up from both of your perspectives. And by the way, I really appreciate your time. I know you guys are probably going to get mauled if you already haven't by the media. And God knows how they're going to spin this.
I'll take them.
What are the positives? Are there any regrets?
For you, Jason Goodman.
So what do you think? What was there anything that came out of positive other than your enjoyment of this Dreamcatcher? Or I remember you guys talking about boomers and how maybe this brought boomers closer to politics. But have we just created more sheeple? Are we gearing people up for more lizard people nonsense? And JFK Jr. and Elvis teaming up together in 2020? That type of thing. Is there positivity? And are there any regrets? Take it from here, Dreamcatcher. Is he still there?
Well, I'd say, there's not, you never regret a shit post, because when you sort of have the intention of it being a shit post, you can't really take much regret in what you did. My regret sort of comes in that it actually was so effective, of being like, hey, maybe you fine crafted too much a shit post that just blew up into this thing. And I do think we can learn a lot from this. I think what needs to happen is you need a government that's more transparent with the people, because you wouldn't have these things exist. You wouldn't have people trying to venture out to figure out their own information. They'd be able to trust their politicians to make sure that, hey, they really are doing what's right by me. And I think if one lesson we can take from this is that we really do need more transparency in government. And I do believe that, even though everybody looks at where we are now as a country, we're very divided, but I do believe that this division was sort of needed, because a lot of people say that this stuff wasn't under Obama. I believe that it was bad under Obama. It obviously wasn't as bad as what it is now, but I think we were headed this way no matter who was going to get elected. But I think if anything that I can take from all this is, for one, you do try to verify your information more, and just hope that when you go and elect someone and they say they're going to do something, that they actually do it. Because I do believe that people gravitated towards something like this because they really don't trust their media, they don't trust their government. And it's sad because, I know that there's always going to be a dark part of history, whatever country you may be a part of. But it seems like the more and more this exists, it's getting more and more dark. So I think that's why you have things like this sort of happen. And that's the best lesson that I can take from it. And like I said, anybody that's been affected, if there are people that still don't believe it, it's your right to still believe it. But we came forward to bring this, hopefully, just bring some transparency to things. And that's really all it's about. And I think, I'm hoping that this maybe turns a new leaf and makes people get out there rather than sitting on forums, sitting on message boards. Go out there and get involved in your committees. Go out and get involved in grassroots. If you really truly care and you truly want something to change, you're not going to change that by sitting behind a keyboard. You have to change that by getting the feet on the ground and doing something. So I guess I would say that's what I would say.
I mean, that's great, man, because that's exactly what I tell people. Listen, you got to be your own hero. You know, I try not to idolize people. That doesn't mean you can't look up to somebody or look up to their acts or say, hey, that's something that I should strive for. You can take pride in your things. But the bottom line is, trust no one but yourself to get out there and get on the ground. And if you're not on the ground, if there isn't a groundswell, you know, I think that we're going to see real change in Europe. I don't know what that change is going to be, but they can't ignore it forever. You know, Paris is on fire every week. So
Every weekend.
yeah, every weekend. Well, yeah, exactly. My point is that you can't be just a keyboard warrior. At the same time, there is power in information, and you know, DeFango, I laid my first eyes on you just last week when you were the first person, Lee Stewie, props to her from Press for Truth, sent me the link as you were decrypting the very original preview files. And you know, I was watching it because I'd already downloaded the 9.8 gigabyte torrent, but I hadn't figured out Veracrypt yet. Again, I'm not big on that. And I remember somebody was asking you something ridiculous on posting them, and you're like, look, man, when I'm done with these, I'll put them on a mega link. We're going to be a lot harder on people this year. And you just kind of rip it into somebody. I'm trying to... Yeah, I mean, that happens. I'm trying to bring people together. I don't think it's ever been a left-right issue. I think it's a right and wrong issue. I think that a two-party system is detrimental to society. We need more choices, not less. But we've become accustomed to becoming kind of like placated and apathetic and just not actionable. And if there is anything to learn here, is that you do have to take action. On the flip side of that, you know, you talk about the divide in America. I feel like in most places you can walk down the street and still, you know, shake hands with your neighbor and hug them, and there's not a cutthroat mentality. It's when you divvy them up into groups that feed into each other's political beliefs, no matter how real or not, if those beliefs include physical conflict with the other side, you're fucked. So, DeFango, I'm going to ask you the same question. Positive, negative, regrets, you know, what do you think?
No regrets, number one. I mean, I think it's positive because I took all the negative stuff that I learned about the Cicada situation and I applied it to a positive situation in order to expose that group, number one, and then to expose this as a greater whole. I think it's positive, though, because we've showed, number one, that the boomers are actually technologically capable. One thing that you can see is that there's more new YouTube channels, more new people that are messing with technology and actually utilizing this shit in a very, very good way. I mean, there's still folks that don't want to believe things, that are still MK Ultra a little bit, because that was something that was processed. You know, we've read all the books. We utilized all the techniques that we could read about and utilize, psychological or otherwise, in order to make sure that this thing actually worked. And I think overall, there's so many people out there that hate me so much, but don't realize just yet that, you know, this was meant to be a very, very direct teaching lesson for everyone and how to actually understand the internet. Because there's people that it's the first time that they ever got into any of this stuff. And this is the reason that they're on the computer actually searching and saving. It's great. You know, the fire was started inside. But the issue now is that, well, great, we have all these people. Now they need to understand how to use the discernment. And I think it's overall, it's been positive, but we just need to have all these people just take a step back away from, you know, the freaking rigmarole, you know, the programming, because that's what this is. It's programming. And that's it. You know, like you're programming a human mind in order to accept information. And it's no different than you were done in school or any other way. The only difference here is that, you know, we didn't do this with a negative reason in mind. It wasn't about breaking people up. It wasn't about dividing people. It was about getting people to realize that this shit is happening every day in so many way different shapes or forms. And you need to be able to identify it, number one, and be strong enough mentally to escape from it. Because if you're going to, you know, survive in this world with technology, it's going to be imperative. And that's just what I think about it.
No, I think you're right. And, you know, again, technology is a double-edged sword, just like anything, you know, whether it be a hammer or your keyboard, it could be used to empower people or enslave them. You can take a hammer, build a house, you can bash someone's head in with it, you know. You can use that
Very
keyboard
true.
for truth, or you can use it to just bully somebody into oblivion. Folks, if you want to see the whole Dreamcatcher story, and it's Dreamcatcher_Q. I believe that is that's the Twitter where you can find some of this evidence. Defango, it's Defango TV, right? Or no, I'm sorry, Defango Lives is your Twitter. You guys got any closing statements? Because I really appreciate this. We're gonna cut it down to the main channel, probably 10-15 minutes for the meat and potatoes. But you tell me.
I'll let Dreamcatcher take this one first.
All I'm gonna say is, try shitposting. It's definitely a great stress reliever. You all should try it out at one time in your life.
It's good ego booster too. If your shit actually works or whatever, it will help you go through. And honestly, I think the closing statements are here is if you've watched my channel, you know from very beginning that I've been setting this up, and I've had to deal with a ton of shit over this. And I still have a constant group of haters from 2 years ago that are in here, like channels that are just tapping, like guys like Jason Goodman is saying that I'm nervous. I'm not nervous. I've never been nervous because what am I nervous about? I'm sitting here on the internet telling the same thing that I said for the last year and a half. I mean, if somebody was gonna come and deny me, or somebody was gonna come and prove me wrong, they would have done it already. If Trump was fucking QAnon, he would have said it already. All right.
Oh, Jesus.
All right.
When I hear that shit, dude, it's out of control.
That's it. It's out of control. That's it. Literally, people have my phone number. They got all the way things to get connected with us. We haven't changed our story, and honestly, we're kind of sorry. We are sorry about how it's affected people, but we know that every single one of you out there have the ability and the wherewithal to get through this one without doing anything ridiculous. Okay? So listen to me now. It's okay. Everything's fine. All the groups and stuff, they don't have to go away. You guys just need to make that realization and then actually start doing something positive, because sitting down, decoding posts, and doing this bullshit, as our man over here just said, isn't going to help you out.
No. And you know what? Again, guys, we got a grand jury on the 9/11 issue. I don't know how far that's going to go, but we got real leaks. I don't know how big they're going to get, but those documents are out there. And I found little nuggets. I know he's actually looking for little nuggets. And this isn't speculation. These are the breadcrumbs we're looking at based on actual evidence, actual history, and actual events that shape our foreign and domestic policy today. And that's why they're important today. Think about that. We have a president that now has twice told us he was going to give us the JFK documents that we were supposed to get over a decade ago anyway. And he failed twice. If they're not going to tell you about an event like that is 50 plus years old, are they going to tell you about an event that didn't just kill one person, but 3,000 plus in this country and literally millions overseas in occupied nations that had nothing to do with the event? You want to argue with me about Saudi Arabia? We're not in Saudi Arabia. Okay, great. You want to argue with me about Afghanistan? You really can't, but okay. You certainly can't do it about Iraq. I know you can't do it about Syria. We're not talking about Somalia and the Sudan. Oh, wait, we've got troops there too? You bet your ass we do. And we've enabled that with our national security state, with allowing Homeland Security to even be put into existence. Deutschland Security. And, I know there are a lot of people out there calling this a LARP, that I'm the one that got played on this one. But guys, I haven't been the one wearing a big Q t-shirt decoding puzzles for the last year and a half. Okay? So
I actually have a Q sweatshirt that I've been wearing for the last couple of weeks. People really, really hate it. They're like, I thought you didn't believe in Q. And I was like, That's not exactly what that means.
All right, guys, I'm gonna call the broadcast Dreamcatcher, Defango. Let's do something in the future. Let's revisit this in a year if this insanity is still alive and it goes from. I sure hope it's not. I pray to God it's not, but we'll see. But yeah, let's check in, and I thank you guys all for your time. And guys, I'm gonna say it again. Use discernment. It's out there. There's plenty of information, but most importantly, if you want to see change, you got to be the change you want.